as promised, I have not moved, and I'm ready to do chapter 14 of Elisabeth Naughton, marked. And let's just get back to it. That's attractive. Dana was in a foul mood, and it was getting fouler by the minute. As she drove back into Silver Hills, a town she thought she'd left behind nearly an hour ago, turned onto Old Cornell Road and past Extreme, she flipped the building the Berg just for the heck of it. She hadn't bothered to tell Carl she wasn't coming back. Ever. And she didn't feel an ounce of guilt over that decision. As far as she was concerned, he could go to the back of the room and fuck himself for all the nasty things he'd said and tried to do to her. And who the hell was Nick to order her to go to the colony anyway? He might be a good lay now and then, but that didn't give him the right to tell her what to do. Her blood pressure shot up a level as she neared the lake and thought about the stupid-ass men in her life. Had she seriously thought Nick was forever material? Man, she really was delusional. I hope that works out for them. She needed to get out of this town and away from the Mesos before she did something stupid, like murdered Carl and outed the colony to the humans once and for all. As if that would improve things for her. Dana blew her bangs out of her eyes as she pulled into Casey's driveway. She knew Casey wouldn't be home yet from the store and figured that was a good thing. She wasn't in the mood to chat, and she hated drawn-out goodbyes. The one at the store had been bad enough. She'd only come back here because she realized too late that she'd left her cell phone at Casey's house the other night, and she needed it back if she were going to keep tabs on the colony. Even she wasn't stupid enough to cut all ties. Oh, I got the yawns. The GPS Nick had put inside everyone's phones was her one link back if things got hot for her out in the real world. She killed the engine and stared at the front of Casey's cute one-story. She couldn't help thinking back to the way Casey had looked today, standing behind the counter in her store, surrounded by all those books. And she couldn't help but think of the way she'd smelled, either. The scent of death was growing around here. Ooh. When Dana first picked it up at the club, she'd hoped she was wrong, but every time she'd seen Casey since that night a few weeks ago, that wretched scent was getting stronger. A wave of despair washed over her, and for once she wished she was a full Argolian and not prone to stupid human emotions. Mesos were supposed to be stronger than the average human, but in Casey's case that wasn't true. And damn it, it wasn't fair. Especially because Casey was one of the sweetest people, Mesos or human, Dana had ever met. The only bright spot was that Casey didn't know what she really was. Man, Dana, your powers truly suck. Of all the gifts a Mesos could have, she'd been saddled with the worst one of all. She could sense disease, but she couldn't do a damn thing about it. She wasn't a healer, she wasn't anything important, she was simply a censor. A prelude to the grim fucking Reaper. Nice language. With a scowl she pushed the useless thought out of her head as she popped the door and eased out of her red Saturn. A Saturn. Classy. She was 98 years old, and she had a couple hundred years to go before she made it to the Isles of the Blessed. If she made it to that elusive plane where the favored heroes dwelt. Knowing her dumbass luck, she'd wind up stuck in Tartarus for all the bad shit she'd done in the world. And since that was the king of all depressing thoughts, she wasn't going there, either. She trudged up the 3 porch steps and dug around in the potted yellow chrysanthemums Casey planted until she found the hide-a-key. Shaking her head, she told herself to convince Casey to find a better hiding spot. Any 2-bit thug would find this in a heartbeat. That despair came back full force when she realized neither of them would be around for that conversation. Don't dwell on it, not your problem anymore. The house was cold and empty when she stepped inside. She flipped on a light in the living room and glanced at the coffee table where she was pretty sure she'd set her phone the night she and Casey had watched National Treasure and polished off a bottle of wine. Interesting choice. Though I have to say I do like that movie. No phone. Deciding that maybe Casey had moved it to the kitchen, she headed back for the back of the house, twirling her keyring around her fingers as she moved, humming a few bars from Linkin Park's In the End. How fitting. She was so preoccupied she didn't notice the change in temperature until it was too late. Until she was already stepping into the room, and her breath was curling in wisps of white around her in the suddenly frigid air. The first demon stepped out of the laundry room, green eyes glowing, and studied her from head to toe. "You are not the one," he growled. Oh, shit. Panic clawed up Dana's throat. She didn't think, just let instinct rule as she turned to run, and made it as far as the couch in the living room before the second demon emerged from Casey's bedroom, blocking her path to the front door. This one drew a long whiff and uttered only one word. Mesos. Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. Dana's adrenaline spiked. The demon from the kitchen had followed her and effectively cut off her only other means of escape. Where is the one? Dana backed up against the TV cabinet. She opened her mouth, but fear rendered her speechless. She started to shake. She doesn't know, the first said. She knows, the second growled, moving closer. Where would she go? Dana's trembling intensified. To the colony, the first said, easing forward. If you want to live, tell us how to find her. Dana choked back a sob. Please, she whispered. I can't. A look passed between the two just before they lunged. Dana never had the chance to scream. Oh, I guess she died. Sad. Then we got some asterisks. Theron was not in a mood to go around with this half-breed. He suddenly wanted answers, and had nothing to do with Nick or the colony. I asked you a question, hero, Nick snapped. Of what interest is Casey to you? Theron's jaw clenched, and impatience bubbled through him. He needed to find Acacia and figure out what in Hades she was up to, but the aggression flashing across Nick's face held him up. The half-breed was itching for a fight, and from the looks of it, he wasn't about to let Theron out of his sight until he got his answers. Theron decided that being honest, to a point, was the best way to handle Nick, so he could get the hell out of here and go find Acacia. The king's health is failing. He wants to meet his daughter before his time is up. I'm to take her to Argolia unharmed. Nick's amber eyes grew wary. Just like that? Just like that. Bullshit. Those amber eyes flashed. Either tell me the truth, or I'll have my soldiers throw you out by the scruff of the neck and beat you to a pulp in the process. Theron's muscles flexed. Try it. Nick's upper lip peeled off his teeth. So threatening. Argonaut or not, you don't scare me. We've existed for hundreds of years without your help. I doubt there's anything good old King Leonidas wants that Casey could provide, and I don't for a second buy your load of bull. Theron didn't answer. Nick crossed the room in 2 long strides and got right up at Theron's face. They were roughly the same height, which is huge, close to the same side, which is enormous, and as the man got close, once again, Theron had the strange recognition he'd had back in Acacia's store. You're dangerously close to death, half-breed, Theron warned in a low voice. I'd rethink what you're about to do. I bet you Nick's real scared. I don't know what the hell is going on here, or what you really want with Casey, Nick said, his face inches from Theron's. But I intend to find out. And that means she's not leaving here with you or anyone else until I'm satisfied with the answer. Nick! The door to the study burst open and 2 women spilled into the room, saving Nick from dismemberment. Eee. The first Theron recognized from earlier, Helene, the one who'd taken Acacia to her room. The other was of average height, but thick around the middle, with dark hair pulled into a braid at the back of her head. Both looked upset, but the dark-haired one was frantic. Nick's gaze snapped to them. What happened? It's Dana, Helene said. No one's heard from her or seen her since yesterday. Nick's focus shifted to the dark-haired woman, Layla. When did you talk to your sister last? Yesterday morning? She ran a nervous hand over her hair, unknowing pulling strands from her braid. "She called from town. I thought she stayed over at her blasted apartment, but now I'm not so sure. Something was wrong. She didn't sound like herself. She was talking about new starts and making changes. She said to call her on her cell if I need her. I've been trying all afternoon. I can't get through to her, Nick. Something's happened to her. I feel it." Nick moved behind his desk and flipped open a laptop Theron hadn't noticed earlier. Beneath all this rock, it had to be wired to a satellite somewhere on the surface. Nick's fingers ran over the keys, and his eyes scanned the screen as he searched. His brow lowered. "The phone's at Casey's house." "Whose house?" Layla asked. "The woman who came in with Nick today," Helene volunteered. Layla's frantic eyes flicked between Nick and Theron as if she just realized Theron was there. "What is Dana doing there? She knows she has to check in." Nick closed the laptop with a snap and jerked his jacket from the desk chair. "I didn't say she was there. I said her phone was there. I'm heading over to take a look." For the first time, Theron noticed the dread darkening Nick's features. Whoever this Dana woman was, she was out there alone, and if she'd gone to Acacia's house, odds were good she could have run into demons. He grasped Nick's arm as the half-breed brushed by. "I'll go with you." "I don't think so." His grip tightened. "Don't be an idiot. You'll need my help." "I fucking doubt it." When Theron's grip didn't lessen, Nick turned his fiery eyes Theron's way, and in them Theron saw disgust and a hatred bred for hundreds of years. "I know you're kind, Argonaut, and I've seen your help." He pointed toward the door. "Every Mesos in this colony has seen the way your kin helped us. They have the scars to prove it." The mutilated faces Theron had seen in the colony outside flashed in his mind, followed by the king's admission that the half-breed's existence had been kept secret because there weren't enough of them to make a difference. He looked deep into Nick's eyes. "I knew nothing of this colony or ones like it until I came here to find Acacia. When I return to Argolia, the Argonauts will look into this matter fully." "How do I know you won't send your kin to kill us all?" It occurred to Theron then that Nick's hatred for the Argonauts and Argolia as a whole ran much deeper than what was evident on the surface. Somehow, this Mesos was connected to Theron's world in ways no one in this colony could begin to understand, and Theron intended to find out what that connection was. "But not now." "Probably now is not a good time." "You have my word. You have my word, as leader of the Argonauts, no harm will come to you and your people by our hands." Nick searched Theron's face for some sign he was lying. Both women in the room were silent as the seconds ticked by on a clock somewhere on the wall. There had to be a clock ticking at that scene to make that work. Somewhere there was a clock. Woo! So it was ticking, so it passed the seconds. Yeah. Theron released Nick's arm, but he didn't avert his eyes, and neither did Nick. "You'll stay here." I keep getting them mixed up. "You'll stay here, hero," Nick finally said, "but only because I don't want to have to watch my back with you around." He pulled on his jacket. "Casey has to willingly go across the portal, and considering everything that happened to her early today because of you, I think it's safe to say she's not going anywhere with you right now. You sit tight until I get back." His eyes flared again as he stepped around the women. "And you better fucking believe we're going to finish this then." He glanced to Layla. "I'll call when I find her." When he was gone, the woman called Layla finally turned her attention Theron's way. "Are you really—" Her gaze swept to Helene. "Is he really an Argonaut?" Helene nodded slowly. "It looks that way, doesn't it?" Layla seemed stunned stupid. Both continued to stare at him as if he had a third eyeball stuck smack in the middle of his forehead. Neither appeared to know what to say. And then Layla stepped toward him, spat in his face, and rushed from the room. That was unexpected. Theron wiped a hand slowly across his cheek and looked toward the one woman who had the stupid sense to remain in the room with him. "Where is Acacia?" he asked as calmly as he could. Helene regarded him with flat eyes, and he saw then it wasn't stupidity but strength born of circumstance. "Upstairs. Sleeping." He headed for the door and paused only when he realized she wasn't about to stop him.
Why are you not afraid of me?"
"I've seen too much to be afraid of someone like you."
"I sense your hatred for me and my kind. You could have kept me from her."
"Could anything keep you from her?"
"She knows."
He turned and stared at her, then slowly shook his head. "Then my helping you is irrelevant," Helene said. "But you'd be wise to remember one thing, Argonaut. Even the original heroes were part human, like us. Mysos from the very beginning. She's not all that different from you. And neither are we." The woman brushed past, leaving him standing alone in the doorway to contemplate her words, a strange sense of unease and foreboding mixing in his veins.
"Half human. Like me."
He glanced toward the stairs. His human side had been repressed for over 200 years. Could that be what he was tapping into? And if it was, did that mean Acacia was the cause? As he climbed the stairs 2 by 2, he rubbed the heel of his hand against his sternum. He felt that pinch all over again. After mere minutes of searching, Theron found Acacia in a room near the end of the hall. Helene had been right. He'd have found her without the woman's help. He could have located her simply by breathing deep and focusing. As soon as he stepped into the room and smelled the familiar scents of lavender and vanilla, his blood heated, and the dream that had become an unfinished reality back in her small house by the lake flared bright. A warm glow from the dying embers in the fireplace fell over her body. She lay on her side, snuggled into her pillow, the thick blankets twisted in her long legs. Her shirt had ridden up, and the slightest hint of flesh was visible between the low waistband of her jeans and the edge of her blue cotton tee. Lots of blue. His eyes ran over her bare skin, lower to her hip, and over the soft, sweet mound of her ass. There we go. It's very sultry language. Oh, there's that word. Thanks to their sultry night together, he knew exactly what that ass looked like, bare and beautiful and marked. His blood pulsed low and hot in response. She is the one. He frowned at the strange voice in his head. As you would, if there were a strange voice in your head. Yeah, well, he knew that already, didn't he? Forcing his gaze away from her beautiful backside, he ran his eyes slowly up her body, across her abdomen, over the swell of her breasts to her face, trying to tamp down the arousal, turning him into a rocket launcher. That's a new one. Exhaustion lines marred her perfect skin, and blue smudges had formed beneath her lashes, but to him she was just as stunning as she'd been the night she'd rescued him from the demons outside that club. Just as beautiful, but thinner. For the first time he noticed. For the first time. You'd think he would have noticed. Nick had been right. She looked exhausted. Her skin had lost its rosy color, and she'd dropped several pounds in just a few days. She's the one. The voice grew stronger as he stood there, staring at her. Would the fates really be so cruel as to give him a half-breed destined to save his race? As a soulmate? His heart pounded in his chest as he turned for the bathroom and took a cold shower that did nothing to cool him down. Of course the fates would curse him, because he was of Hercules' line, the one hero that was still, to this day, revered by some and reviled by most others. Hercules' indiscretions were as numerous as his accomplishments, and every Argonaut of his line had been dealt a blow because of his selfishness. Why would Theron think he'd be any different? Of course, it was still possible he was only attracted to Acacia because of the way they'd met and who he knew she was, and the fact she was a forbidden and tempting treat he'd never sampled. If she was his one, however, there was a sure way to find out. And he grew hot and hard just at the thought. As he toweled off, he debated his options. The one that stood out strongest wasn't ideal, but he had to know, didn't he? Once he got this absurd thought out of his mind, he could refocus on the real reason he was here. Decision made, he pulled on his pants and quietly walked back into the bedroom. Acacia was still out, having shifted only slightly since he'd first stepped into the room. Tired to his bones, he slid into the big bed beside her and gently pulled the covers up around her waist. As he rolled to his side, he fingered a lock of her hair falling over her shoulder and brought it to his nose. He smelled grapefruit and remembered the shampoo in her shower. Hair was soft and silky between his fingers, as silky as that between her thighs. She does. She likes to just put you right there. The roar returned to his head. His erection responded to the visual in his mind, and he hissed in a long breath to tamp down the renewed arousal, zinging along his nerve endings. Even if she is your one, she's sick, and she's the king's daughter. It won't make a difference. Yeah, there was that, and the fact that honor and duty came first with him, no matter what. Though it nearly killed him. He nearly just died. He forced himself to let go of her hair, and in the process brushed her shoulder with the slightest touch. In sleep, she groaned and inched his way, as if searching for more contact. And before he knew it, her beautiful backside came into full contact with his hips, and the erection he'd been trying so hard to keep in check grew rock hard. The blood rushed out of his head with a screaming roar, and went due south. Take her, now. Find out. Right here. His cock wedged its way into the crease of her behind, as if it had a mind of its own, where it pulsed and pounded and begged for release. If your penis starts talking to you, you might want to see a doctor. A moan slipped from her lips, a mindless act of approval. His lust for her grew to explosive levels. He slid one of his arms around her belly and tugged her back into his bare chest. It was all he could do to not tear off her jeans, flip her to her stomach, lift her hips, and plunge hard and deep to discover what it was about her that left him in such a frenzy. And oh, he was ready. He wanted. Needed. But just as he shifted to turn her, her scent drifted into his nose, that sweet and familiar combination traveling through every nerve in his body and all the way into his soul. Where, oddly, it calmed him, the way it had in her little house. Enough that his brain kicked into gear and common sense came flooding back. His cock still jerked with rabid desire to explode inside her, but he found he could control the urge, that he could lie here next to her and enjoy the warmth of her body against his without the burning need to overpower and take what he wanted by force. He wanted her to come to him, as she had in her house. His heart rate slowed. He closed his eyes and drew in long, deep breaths, more tired than he remembered being in ages. And that's when he heard the voice. Again. She's the one. Wonder if that's coming from his penis, too. Alright. Done with chapter 14. Congratulations, everybody.